Hello, it's me, Dan, and I am joined as usual by Alice.
Hi, Barbie.
Today we are discussing Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, starring Cillian Murphy as J. Robert Oppenheimer, Emily Blunt as Kitty Oppenheimer, Matt Damon as Leslie Groves, Robert Downey Jr. as Lewis Strauss, and Florence Pugh as Jean Tatlock. Working with Kip Thorne on Interstellar, Christopher Nolan came to realise that both physicists and writers start with intuition. He read the Oppenheimer Bible, that is American Prometheus, and adapted it with precision. This isn't like biopics that play fast and loose with history. The script was written in first person, unusually, as it's very much Oppenheimer's subjective view. And like the audience, he is a flawed, emotional, powerful, calculating, and even dangerous character at times. It's a long film, about 3 hours. I got a very numb bum. You can kind of split it up into sections. The first part of the film is kind of like The Imitation Game or Theory of Everything. And then there's a very sort of Nolan-esque putting the crew together section. You son of a bitch, I'm in. Then there's the really tense Trinity test, which is probably one of the parts of the film that I felt most like I felt in other Nolan films. Say like how tense you feel at the end of Interstellar. And then you get the horror, and then at the end you get the 12 Angry Men stuff. The last section in particular is one that I didn't know from history, because here we do learn about World War II and the Cold War, but you don't really delve into each individual involved.
No, it's more like the treaties and the
overarching
high level, yeah. The boring stuff.
No. I loved studying the Cold War, all like U-2 spy plane and Korea and Vietnam.
No, I left before Nam.
You weren't there, man.
Exactly.
It's a Nolan film, so obviously nothing happens in order, but we still first meet Oppenheimer as a university student at Cambridge with his university hair to indicate his age, rather like Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins.
It looked fully dyed as well.
It did, didn't it? He tries to poison his teacher. That incident was real, but the poison probably wasn't cyanide in real life.
I wonder what he did use.
He claimed to not know why he did it. The university found out and his parents had to step in to prevent him getting expelled. The way he changes his mind about this action, of course, foreshadows his shifting stance later in the film on nuclear weapons. Famous physicists pop up like it's the Avengers. You've got Einstein, who's played by Tom Conti, who we saw as Bruce Wayne's fellow prisoner in the pit in The Dark Knight Rises. Bohr, Teller, Feynman, Heisenberg. And then we've got presidents. We've got Lyndon B. Johnson, Truman, JFK.
At this point in the film, Murphy's eyes are they're full of ambition, they're full of hunger, literal hunger, because I think he ate like an apple a day or something. That was it, like a can of tuna or something to drop enough weight to play Oppie. And I loved the visual realisation of the particles and the waves and the strings and like all that energy that he's visualising. And it's that energy is also inside him, and that's a quote from Nolan. I'm like paraphrasing it, but I like the way of that beauty sparks. You can see those sparks, and then it gives way to those destructive fire images. And I think later on, all through the film, his eyes are haunted by something, predominantly guilt, obviously.
Yeah, by the end especially, yeah. We meet another fascinating three-dimensional character in Jean Tatlock, who really didn't like flowers. Her death remains mysterious in the film thanks to some ambiguous editing.
Yeah, I didn't notice the thing that you noticed.
I think there's a gloved hand.
Yeah, which leads back to a passage from the book American Prometheus, where there's no conclusive evidence either way, but she may have actually not died by suicide. She may have actually been murdered, which I found really interesting as well.
Quite easy to believe once you've met characters like Pash.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that assassination was just absolutely rife at this point in the war.
He then marries Kitty, and the film shows him to be kind of a crap husband and parent, really.
See, I don't think he's really a crap parent. I think or husband, really. I think he's more of an absent one. But I feel like part of what's shown is, I mean, Kitty's been married like several times, I think, by the time she meets Oppie, and I think it's definitely plays into that thing of that's what you're expected to do, is get married and have children, but his consuming passion is his work. It's never going to be his kids.
Kind of driven in a similar way to Alfred Borden, Christian Bale's character in The Prestige, who sacrifices everything for his craft. Oppenheimer is drawn inexorably into the Manhattan Project. It seems he is chosen partly because he is exploitable and disposable. His parents were German immigrants, and he had lefty views and friends, so he couldn't really say no. When he takes up the director post, he seems a lot more comfortable and confident in the new persona. He even adopts a uniform to begin with, and then switches to his trademark hat, which is like a sort of reflection.
You love that hat.
It's awesome. Sort of a reflection of his new role as figurehead of the scientific community. He's a very enigmatic character, and he kind of swings from very confident to a little more retiring.
I don't know. He's definitely more comfortable in certain scenarios than others. Giving that lecture in Dutch, like when he's got the science as his backing, he's much more confident. But in like the latter half of the film, I wouldn't say that he's like retiring or wilting. I'd say he's more playing the martyr. Like he is being a stoic martyr.
I particularly love Cillian Murphy's voice in this film. It's so different to all of the previous characters that he's played.
Definitely, it's a very distinctive mid-century American kind of,
Well, it sounds like Oppenheimer if you listen to his interviews.
Awesome.
After a ton of foreboding, and we get a ticking clock, and it gets very tense for the Trinity test. The rain comes, and that really did happen. Christopher Nolan does like to do things for real, but he did not, in fact, drop a nuke.
Oh, you don't say.
The effect in the film is achieved by shooting a TNT explosion from multiple angles and then compositing it into extra layers by computer.
Wow. On the real project, 2 people actually did die from radiation poisoning, and cancer cases in Los Alamos remain a controversial topic. So the community has, especially those downwind of where the test site, have said that they've got had increased cancer cases and other ailments from the testing that was done. And then, of course, as alluded to in the film, it was also a site for the First Nations people, so quite controversial placement in itself for that site.
I assume it didn't get given back to them.
No.
Then we get one of the film's most chilling scenes, in which the despicable masters of war sit round deciding on targets.
Oh, let's not go for Kyoto. I had my honeymoon there.
Bastard.
Yeah.
You find yourself wishing that they could have just dropped it on uninhabited land. But of course, the Japanese may have doubted the veracity of the news and the Americans' willingness to use it as a weapon.
Yeah.
Japan didn't surrender until actually after Nagasaki, and some of their military personnel still attempted a coup to prevent their surrender. When that failed, those personnel committed seppuku.
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting about the differences in the culture. And I know obviously we're a long way from the Second World War, but it's definitely a strong culture in Japan of personal honour, which I think probably really strongly influenced that decision. And I think that is one of the things that's been like widely commented on, that is actually a cause of Japan having one of the highest like suicide rates of any country in the world, which is really sad.
Everything's on them. They don't say,
it's not bad luck or just generalised kind of misfortune. It's all personally falling on that person's head.
A lot of pressure. Christopher Nolan has said he is drawn to people making hard to understand decisions and situations where there are no easy answers.
It's a real, it's a juggernaut of a story. You just get dragged along in the same way that Oppenheimer does. The whole scenario of the nuclear bomb would have happened without him. As soon as it was known that it was possible in the community, someone would have done it. And obviously they were in that race to do it. And I think, the whole film has has that march towards inevitability, the foreboding, all the stuff around like the children screaming and like that one scream in that particular auditorium scene. The two main women in his life saying that there's something in the air, something is changing, the world is changing. There's that real kind of momentum and we're getting swept along with it.
Absolutely. It's interesting you say about how it could have happened without him. With sacrifice being a major theme in Nolan's oeuvre, which we'll cover again. Obviously, Japan's is the greatest sacrifice, and as it's wartime, the sacrifices abound. But Oppenheimer's is also a kind of sacrifice. He bears the guilt that some other physicist might otherwise have borne. Christopher Nolan is no didact. He's really always just searching for a good, balanced story. But any director should feel obliged when telling this story to talk about how these events have left the world.
Show it to the AI developers, I say.
Yeah, that too. And I think he does do a great job of reminding us that we are living in the aftermath of these events today.
So in the auditorium scene, obviously actually showing Hiroshima could be quite tasteless depending on how it's done. But the scene in the hall is really powerful and horrible, but it's not grotesque. And Van Hoytema uses similar effects to Visser in Batman Begins for that disoriented feeling.
Very effective.
Yeah, very.
It feels like Oppenheimer is not only naive about the bomb ending all future conflict, but he trusts his government not to stop him opposing the H-bomb. Obviously, it's much easier for us to say as we have witnessed history after him. One thing that was very interesting to notice throughout the film is that a lot of background characters are as polarised as people are now.
Yeah.
Something that's evident from the more three-dimensional characters in the film is that we contain multitudes. We're all a lot more nuanced than that. The film ends and is permeated by two electric hearings. The first is the Senate confirmation hearing for Strauss, played by Robert Downey Jr. excellently.
And I love the way that there's actually a note made around that he doesn't call himself Strauss, he says Strauss, like trying to Americanise his name.
In the film, he's brought down by Hill, Rami Malek. In real life, he made lots of enemies and several people spoke out against him. Whenever we are seeing the world through Strauss's viewpoint, we see in black and white. You could say that he maybe metaphorically sees in black and white, but also, of course, it helps us as an audience differentiate his view from Oppenheimer's. Like a lot of immoral characters, Strauss very much judges others by his own measures. So his rant reveals that he thinks Oppenheimer is as much a manipulative and selfish monster as he is.
Sorry, I just have to pause there and say I love that you just said rant.
It's rant. I have a plant. I have a rant. Then we also have Oppenheimer's security hearing, a backroom kangaroo court. We know this is how things get done in government, media, corporations to this day. Kitty characterises it as a kind of penance for Oppenheimer. I got the feeling she felt like it wasn't enough.
Do you think she feels like it's not enough? Because I didn't think that. I felt like she was saying they're never going to let you forget this, rather than she feels like he deserves more punishment.
I'm sure they're lovely in real life, but Dehaan and Dust Malkian are perfectly cast as the greasy bastards. And Jason Clarke is very hateable.
Oh, yeah, you know someone is a hateable figure in a film when they're shouting and, like, spittle is flying out of their mouth. Blech.
Kitty has a surprisingly small role across the film, and then suddenly she absolutely kicks ass in the meeting.
I love that bit. I absolutely loved it.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Especially Blunt doing it. She's excellent.
18 years ago.
Yeah. In real life, it was both Stross and Teller who set Borden on Oppie.
Oh, that's interesting, because in the film, Teller defended him in the hearing.
Yeah, and there were actually at least 4 spies at Los Alamos working for the Russians.
Wow.
We also meet Truman, played by Gary Oldman. He used to do a lot of villains. Lately, he typically doesn't. Truman definitely comes across as a repugnant villain here. In the final moments of the film, as we stare into the tormented face of Oppenheimer, I noticed that his hat is all dusty. And wondered if that was meant to be dust from Los Alamos, dust from Hiroshima.
Yeah. Do you think it's meant to be like an allegory of that he always carries the weight and the horror of what's happened with him?
I do, yeah.
Interesting.
Although it's not fiction and not particularly action-packed, it certainly feels thematically like a Nolan movie. And he uses some of his usual scripting tricks, such as repeating a phrase back to a person as humour. Even Oppenheimer's friend Rabbi offering him the orange in 2 moments.
Eat.
It reminds me of Heart of Darkness in that it's more impressive than enjoyable.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think we both said it was excellent, but would we want to watch it again? I think I would. Having come like a couple of days on, I think I would.
It's hard going.
Yeah.
But I find myself wanting to watch Dunkirk again.
Yeah, that's true. And that was equally like hard going. Like,
you know, it's not a Ken Loach misery.
No.
Even though it's mostly talking, it's absolutely thrilling.
Oh yeah, definitely. It definitely, like I said, it pulls you along, doesn't it?
Let us know in the comments what you thought of Oppenheimer.
And join us next time where we'll be continuing our Christopher Nolan retrospective.
Bye.
Bye.